Have you struggled painting trees in watercolors and can't seem to create natural looking trees? Today I will unlock the secrets to creating gorgeous trees with depth and dimension. I'm Dee, watercolor artist, so let's get painting. Pre-mix 4 to 5 values of green and keep it ready on your palette. Using yellow-green, make leaf-like marks on the paper. I am using a size 6 round brush. While that is wet, add in the second tonal value of green. The bottom part is usually darker, so use darker green and make a semicircle or a circular form of the foliage. At the edges, I will try and give the leaf-like impression and make small leaf-like marks. While it's important to create depth, and we do that by painting in layers, that's why the top bit of the tree is always the lightest, the yellow-green, and the bottom and the base layer is the darkest with the blue-green. This is the wet on wet technique of painting, and we get a thorough blend of layers. Paint the tree trunk using burnt sienna or sepia. For some dimension, I am lifting color from the right and adding sepia or darker value on the left. Your tree has come to life. You can add more leaves at the center and the top, but what we can do is let it dry and later add darker value of green. Okay, now let's paint a second tree using the same wet on wet technique, but we will have 3 semicircles this time, and then we'll try and connect it with branches. Essentially, I am creating one bush at a time, and then I will connect it to form the entire tree. So we paint the lightest value of green, yellow-green at the top, in the middle value or the mid-tone of green, and at the bottom the darkest green, and blending it thoroughly and making leaf-like impressions at the edges. Now let's paint the final bush or the foliage, tilting a bit to the right with the lighter green, mid green and the darkest green. Blending it quickly while it's wet. A tip is to maintain the water consistency of the paint. As you can see, I am using thicker consistency of paint for darker values and more diluted paint for the lightest value. The tree foliage is ready. We just have to connect the branches to the trunk. Use sepia or burnt sienna and connect it. Make the branches and tree trunk realistic. So I am making a swift line-like motion. For dimension in the trunk, use sepia at some parts like the left side of the trunk, and the right you can leave it as lighter values. Also add some sprucing out branches, and then we can paint some light foliage just to give an impression of the leaves coming out from those branches. Throughout, I'm using a dabbing motion of the brush. If I need to make fine marks, then I am just touching the tip of the brush. But if I need to make a bush or a bigger shape, then I use the belly of the brush by varying the pressure. Let's paint the last tree. It is more like 2 semicircles merging into one. The technique is the same, wet on wet. I am not going to repeat. You must be familiar by now. The key takeaway to painting such beautiful realistic tree is having 4 to 5 values of green. You can create lighter value of green by just adding lemon yellow, Then to increase the intensity, add more indigo to your green mix, which will give you darker value of green. If you just follow these steps, I am sure you will see a change in the way you paint trees. Any subject you want to paint composes of shape, values, colors and texture. If you pay attention to these 4 elements and use it time and time again, you will create that sense of depth and dimension in your painting. I have made the bottom layer of the foliage very dark, and it is also important to have that shadow effect when it's a very large tree, because the light is not hitting the bottom of your tree. Let's paint the tree trunk with the burnt sienna mixture which we used previously. Paint the base layer with a diluted version of brown, and then you can make some portions of the tree trunk darker. Your final tree is almost ready and has come to life. While the paint has dried, what we could do is use darker value of green and paint the shadows and bottom layer. We need this step to be done in the end because the paint has to dry, else it will blend with rest of the layers. So the final layer is usually the darkest green. Lastly, I will paint the grasses, else it will look like the trees are hanging in the air. It's very simple to paint these blades of grass. Use mid-tone of green, paint small straight lines, and then take a wet damp brush and run it under the grass blades. And while that paint is wet, use dark green and add it at random places. Hope you have enjoyed this video and learned how to paint natural looking trees. If you have found this useful, please subscribe to my channel and also check out my other videos on how to paint autumn, spring and a summer tree. I love painting trees. If you do, let me know in the comments.